Hello, fellow egoists! Today we're going for an in-depth analysis of chapter 234. Let's head straight into a short overview of the chapter. It starts right after Hiori intercepted the pass from Lorenzo to Baro, with Isagi immediately joining him. Hiori goes on the offense big time by starting with a roulette to get past Sendo and using his hand on Sendo's body to stop him from even trying to get near the ball and on his back to stop him from turning around. After that, Hiori passes to Isagi as Nico presses him, but Isagi isn't the only one there to help. With Yukimiya coming into the line, our three players head for a raid battle into Uber's fortress as they trade passes back and forth. With Hiori getting a final pass from Yukimiya and trapping it with a pose similar to what you would find in an alternative fashion magazine, our Cyan Blue Boy goes for a roulette from Abdi to Rico and then another roulette between them as Perron tries to catch up to him. Though his pressing is ineffective as Hiori is able to instantly use his reflexes, indicated by the black slur line in his eyes, to immediately find the goal-scoring image Isagi has in mind and links up to it perfectly. With his world-class footwork, Isagi is finally able to beat Aiku in a 1v1, something that would have been unthinkable so far. But he even goes further by beating Lorenzo, who came to stop him with an insane lob into a lefty volley, doing a move reminiscent of an insane goal we have seen before in the story. With this, Isagi has all the pieces he needs to score. An open shot course, no one to defend in front of him, and the time needed to find a shot course. Or does he? From right behind him, we see a certain player coming in hot. Mikhail Kaiser using the Predator Eye along with a direct shot Kaiser impact to try and steal Isagi's goal, though Isagi won't let himself be beaten so easily. Our egoist immediately taps into flow and we get a Captain Tsubasa type of shot, which may look insane but was actually the less optimal option, as because of this Kaiser forced Isagi to go for another shot that he had wanted, which makes it so Baro, who came back from the attacking third, could stop the shot. With the ball high up in the air and Hiori wondering what is the missing piece for him and Isagi, the chapter ends. With this overview done, we can now move on to the in-depth analysis. First off, let's talk about Hiori's dribbling. As we see, he's absolutely wild and styled on everyone on the field. So where does this come from? Well, it comes from the fact that Hiori has embraced his new ego, one of a producer. This type of ego related to players is one I had already talked about in my video about Sai and Hiori titled Striker's Pathmaker, which I made a few months back. I highly recommend watching it, as it'll show that Hiori's development isn't one that just comes from out of nowhere and that Hiori was always destined to be this type of player. Though to get back on topic, the main thing is that Hiori always seemed to have great dribbling, as we saw him reliably dribble past people in 1v1s. Whether that be Chigiri in the third selection, Kiora in the training session, during the Nell, or even in the U20 match where he seemed to have gotten past two people in front of him. The main difference is that during those times, Hiori prioritized passing the ball instead of dribbling further and using his own capabilities. So while it may seem out of nowhere, it's not like we were given feats of him showing bad dribbling, and rather good feats which support what we've seen so far. And especially since, as said in my video about Hiori and Sai, those two players are similar in weapons, and so Hiori having such a smooth dribbling was to be expected. So here Hiori embracing his ego and will to do things by himself has stopped from just leaving all the work to the striker and wants to leave his own image on the field, going for a much more aggressive style of play. Though the producer role that Hiori speaks of has actually way more players in it than just him and Sai. So far we have those two, but also Ness and Reo, though Reo is a bit of a weird case, but I'll eventually talk about the four of them in their own separate video. But what makes Hiori such an insane dribbler isn't only his raw capability, but also the fact that he seems to be making his moves based on his entire view of the field. For viewers who know football to a certain extent, they'll know that it can be pretty easy to just tunnel vision on your duel and lose a bit of awareness about the field. But Hiori is instead doing his moves based on his entire view of the field and metavision, making it that his dribbling creates spaces not only by his raw capability, but also that he created spaces with a certain idea in mind, thereby crafting his own favorable image of the field. Though for Isagi's image, how did he expect Lorenzo and knew how to beat him? For that we can just look at our animation of the field. As we see in it, when Isagi came from the right to the left, he managed to scan people close to him and also saw Lorenzo. With this, he knew that Lorenzo would cop to stop his shooting course and knew exactly how to beat him. But for Lorenzo to leave the man marking of Kaiser once again shows that Isagi is the eye of the storm. Lorenzo was basically forced to commit, as otherwise Isagi would have scored, and here we can explain why exactly Isagi was able to beat Aiku and also Lorenzo. The key to understanding how is back in the second selection and in Rin's playstyle at that moment. The basis of Rin's playstyle was to control the thinking of others and not give them time to think. One of the ways he used that was through fake shots. Because of the shot course existing, the defender is obligated to commit, as otherwise it's a guaranteed goal. but Isagi used that to his advantage to bait Lorenzo and Aiku through a fake shot. So here we see two things. If Isagi is in position to score, you are basically at his mercy. But also that the strength of Isagi's lefty direct shot doesn't only lie in the fact that Isagi has more shot courses, but most importantly that it gives him insane versatility in the way he can approach a goal. And with Kaiser coming in to shoot, we have a confirmation. The fact that direct shots and the Predator Eye can be used together, as here Kaiser went immediately to shoot the ball after scanning for a shot course with the Predator Eye, as he was coming near the ball. Something that we have seen Isagi do as far back as the second selection, though the process to find a shot course wasn't based on the Predator Eye at that time. Though this shot was blocked by Barrow. How did he do it? Well, it's pretty easy. If we look in the double panel where Hiori is using Metavision to link up with Isagi, we see Barrow on the far right of the field. So here all Barrow did was that he used his great vision and prediction ability as he was tracking back to find the shot course Isagi and Kaiser could use and went to block it. With this, we see that not only Barrow has great football IQ and vision, but most importantly that just like with Lorenzo, you don't need Metavision to have great vision on the field and predict things. Now let's talk about more subtle things in this chapter. First off, the Isagi hunting is on. As Isagi says in the kickoff, he is currently the king of this match, even if he hasn't succeeded in scoring the final goal yet. Absolutely everyone on the field is moving either to contain him or to hunt him, from Kaiser to Lorenzo to Barrow. Everyone is there to contain him. Another great thing is that we see Isagi trying to shoot outside of the penalty area with his lefty direct shot, showing that Isagi's power has indeed gotten much better and he's confident of shooting from that far away, something that was impossible to imagine before. And I did say I will talk about more subtle things, so let's talk about Kunigami. We've only seen him on some panels, but his positioning is actually pretty great when you consider it. With the distance he has from Aiko and Ryu, he's putting them in a really awkward position, as they can't commit fully to him since this would leave space for Isagi to use, but also that they can't just ignore him as otherwise he could burst through and score. So they're forced to stay in place and to counter whichever option they will take. So here they're basically at the mercy of Bastard's offense. So even if Kunigami isn't the big highlight of the chapter, he's still doing a great job, which is what he's always been doing so far if you've paid attention to him. And he's the reason why Isagi was able to beat Aiku this easily. Because Aiku is forced to stay in place, Isagi can take the initiative and Aiku can only try to react. But because Isagi and Hiori already knew how he would react, Isagi could beat him easily with his off-the-ball movement. Now we've talked about subtle things. Let's go even further and talk about invisible things. Ness, the Kaiser toy boy who's absolutely nowhere to be seen on top of having his fraud status still in play. Sorry to the two Ness fans that exist, but your boy is getting fucking cooked out here.
Your life is nothing. You serve zero purpose. You should kill yourself now.
So with all this, we've gotten over pretty much everything in the chapter. There's still a bit more to analyze, but this video is getting pretty long. Now let's talk about predictions. Who will get to the ball first? Currently the best in position to do it would be Kunigami. As we see with the players near the ball in the animation, we have Ryu, Barrow, Isagi, Kaiser and Kunigami. Though for the first 4 players, their momentum has been stopped since they either had to shoot or to jump to stop the shot. So the only one with enough momentum to immediately reach the ball first would be Kunigami or maybe Ryu. Though does this mean that we're getting a Kunigami goal? I don't think so. I actually expect Kunigami to shoot the ball but get stopped by Fukaku-gen for him to at least show some worth and for him to not be put on the field for nothing. With this, Kunigami's current playstyle will have been shown to not work, and we may get him to finally ask for himself if this is the right way and hopefully find his hero self once again in the PXG match. Though the next chapter's title is The Meaning to be Born, which is an obvious reference to Hiori's development and how he has always questioned this. It could also be a highlight to Isagi's future awakening in this match. And with this, we get a perfect segue into one of the most important points for Hiori and generally why duos may or may not work in Blue Lock. The most important part for an awakening is the challenge. You need to be put in a situation where you're forced to evolve to even get anywhere near something like an awakening. And this is exactly the missing piece from Hiori and Isagi. What Hiori did in this play was simply follow Isagi's imagination instead of trying to challenge it, which is how exactly Isagi will be forced to evolve. This is actually a pretty interesting plot point that isn't at the forefront every time, but most of the insane goals we've seen from duos have come from a player challenging the other. The best 3 examples being Shido's Dragon Drive goal, Nagi's 5-stage fake volley and Yukimiya's World Screw goal. In all of those instances, what made the player dominate the field and create super goals was the fact that they were challenged by another player, and by rising up to the challenge they created a goal that surpassed the evolving field at play. For Shido's Dragon Drive, Sae made passes to Shido that constantly challenged him and so helped him reach flow. For Nagi's 5-stage fake volley, Reo made a pass that went to Nagi's dream of beating Isagi, a challenge that could help Nagi trance himself and reach flow, and similarly for Yukimiya, Isagi challenged him to not just be a mud boat and to die with his goal, putting everything on the line to prove his worth and ego by his own capabilities, and this goal is actually the best example, as because of the challenge that Isagi gave to Yuki, and that Yuki surpassed, he was able to one-up the field and so stop the block from Reo, something that we could for sure imagine happening if Hiori challenged Isagi, and so that his shot wouldn't get blocked by Barrow and by Kaiser. So here what made it so that Hiori and Isagi's play couldn't score came from the fact that all Hiori did was follow Isagi's imagination instead of challenging it, thereby forcing Isagi to create new plays that rise up to the challenge and force him to dominate the field by using absolutely all of his capabilities, which is sort of what happened when he shot to try and one-up Kaiser since he entered flow. So the fact that he entered flow at that moment does show that Isagi is close to the flow zone, and if Hiori challenges him a bit more, Isagi could for sure enter it again and awaken. By doing so, Hiori will potentially have finally found his meaning to be born, though that is something we'll have to see. And there's still more to be said, but for personal reasons, this video had to be rushed a bit. Though if you want to discuss it further, you can join the Discord server of the channel where we regularly go for in-depth analysis of Blue Lock, and you can also peep my Twitter account where I tend to post analyses that don't end up as videos. With all that said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and have a great one, fellow egoists.